staying with us and welcome back to Worldview. I now want to have that conversation that I had promised you earlier on. Joining me in studio is Abel Oyeyo. He is an international relations expert and he's also a researcher at the Center for African Progress. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I want us to start with a bit of politics because I'm telling you this whole week it has been whose manifesto is better than the other. From your assessment, I don't know if you've been able to check the two documents. There are quarters that are saying that, these two documents are almost similar. Others are saying they're not similar. It's only that they're tackling the similar issues that Kenyans are facing. From your point of view, what do you think of the two manifestos compared?
Well, the difference between the NASA manifesto and the Jubilee manifesto is language. They're addressing the
language?
Same, yes, they're addressing the same issues. And and promising mainly the same things. So the difference is just the language.
So what about the how to? Because there's the message, but then there's also how the two manifestos are saying this is how we will do this.
Now, there is so little when it comes to how in both documents. But I think now the NASA manifesto seems to be catching a lot of fire because, they have the benefit of not having been in government. So Jubilee is facing the question of you've been given time and you've not delivered on so many of the promises you're talking about. Why should we trust you? So NASA has an upper hand by saying, give us a chance. We're going to do all this.
All right.
So there's not so much about how. It's just we'll do this, we'll do this.
All right.
Typical political speak.
So what then should a Kenyan do? Because, you have these two documents. There are people out there who are going to be looking at these two documents, and this is what is going to inform them on who they will vote for. So what is that thing then, Kenyans out there looking at these documents should be looking out for if you're saying these two documents really are not speaking about how to achieve the things that have been said?
Now, the problem we have in third world countries like Kenya is lack of what we call a differentiated platform. When you have a political party platform, especially in a place like the US, there's some features which distinguish between, of course, the Democrats and Republicans. Now, Kenya is not advanced to a level where you can find some key issues which, of course, separate the political divisions we have around here. So what Kenyans can do, number one, is to assess the histories of the leaders. You look at Raila, you look at Musyoka, look at Wetangula, Musalia, and Isaac. Of course, all these guys have been in politics for a long time, and their track record can be scrutinized. So that is the basis on which to decide so and so has done XYZ in the past. So given a chance, they can deliver. The same thing with Uhuru and Ruto. So you have to assess or scrutinize the performance records of all these guys instead of focusing on documents which look the same.
And where should we get this information? Because the other issue is that on one end, talking about the scorecard for Jubilee, on one end they say, we have done this much. One of the biggest questions was that they're saying that they created 800,000 jobs. Everybody's like, where are these jobs? So as a Kenyan and even as a media, where is the right place to get this information? Because there's all kinds of information everywhere.
Now, when we talk about, of course, employment creation, we have records. Maybe in 2013, when Uhuru was being sworn in as president, there is a level at which, Kenya stood when we talk about unemployment. Maybe it was around 70%. Now, if you look at the same issue of unemployment as we speak now, it's possible to get a particular percentage. Maybe it's 60%, then you can say it's gone down by 10%. From there, you can narrow down to the figures, of course, regarding the number of jobs they've been able to create. It's possible to get that. Problem is, the unemployment crisis in Kenya is so big that a very slight reduction cannot be detected by the population.
It cannot be felt.
Yes.
All right. Let's move away from the manifestos. Hopefully Kenyans will read and see what they want. But let's also discuss something that happened, a big milestone for NASA, and that was that the presidential results will be announced at constituency level. What did that ruling by the Court of Appeal do to this whole process of our elections? What impact did it have?
I think there is what we call the perception of credibility. Once an election has been conducted, of course, and the votes have been counted at the constituency level, and the announcement is made by the returning officer, the perception is what has been read out, of course, to the news media and all that is credible. So that adds an element of credibility to the elections. But at the end of the day, it's all about perception, because if it's rigging, at the end of the day, it can be done right at the constituency level, and the same rigged results can be announced. In fact, the process of sending results all the way to Nairobi for the chairman to verify before announcing provides room for what we call maybe phone calls and verification here and there, so as to avoid sharing results which can be questioned at a later, point.
Okay.
So it can be viewed as a win for NASA, but at the end of the day, it can also be a minus. Yeah.
Interesting. And that's where, the critics were saying that it's fine that you've won this, but it's also good to put, your foot soldiers on the ground to oversee the whole process.
That is a point. So the government has to be very, very careful in terms of making sure that there is security, so that whatever that is given out to the people is credible.
It's credible.
Yeah.
All right. What else we're expecting is what's happening currently in court, and it's has everything to do with this other controversy. We've been dealing with one controversy after the other, and this one is to do with the ballot paper printing. Already, all the other ballot papers for the other seats are being printed.
Yes.
Only the presidential ballot papers will be printed, I think, starting from probably next week or next week, but one. Next week. Yes. So, what are we expecting today? Is it even possible that the court would advise or rule that this ballot tender be cancelled?
That is unlikely. We had an assurance, of course, sometimes back from the Chief Justice about the lack of the necessity to cancel the tender. But again, of course, NASA has an issue which is raised about the credibility of the whole process.
Yeah.
But again, if you listen to both sides, it's a case of a guy who was promised. Of course, there's an allegation of someone who was promised to push for the tender to be given to another company. But you see, another company was given the tender. So it's not basically about politics. It's a clash of economic interests of the two sides. Whereas I think it has some kind of hand in that. And then, of course, we've had histories of what the company has done in the past in some places like, I think, Zambia or Zimbabwe, where there was a problem with the kind of printing they did. There was rigging and all that. So all these questions are legitimate and they have to be asked. But again, they have to consider the whole process, because I think we have a few days, maybe 39 days to the election.
Yes.
So that is a very short duration.
Okay.
So if it was to be questioned, it should have happened
earlier.
And of course, we have to make sure that the questions being asked are legitimate and sincere. Yeah, it's not an issue of, my friend was not given the tender, so I have to question it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting view. So let's now leave our local politics and talk about Donald Trump. Finally, the travel bans that he had talked about are coming to effect. That travel ban against Muslims from 6 different Muslim majority countries.
Yeah.
What do you make of this? Is it just him going by what he promised to do? Because right now he's dealing with too much. Actually, Trump's life should be extremely chaotic, dealing with so many things at the same time. What is this likely to have? What kind of impact is this likely to have?
Trump, of course, that is what he promised when he was campaigning. He talked about banning Muslims from, traveling to the U.S. It was a blanket promise he made. And, of course, the base played right into that. And I think that is a score. That is some kind of victory for him.
On what end? On him fulfilling the promises he made.
Of course.
Okay.
And we can expect the base to rally behind him and be with him strongly, because they expected him to do that. That is the basis on which they supported him. But of course, in the long term, he does not come out as the kind of leader for the 21st century that is so, globalized. So that reduces his influence, of course, in the global stage as a leader. So it can be viewed as some kind of victory for him back home, and not the wider American society, but of course to the base.
All right.
And winning elections in the US, of course, is all about impressing your core supporters.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And that leads me to my next question, because terror is something that, the whole world is dealing with this thing. Even just UK, on the other hand, almost every month for the last couple of months, they've been dealing with something to do with terrorism. It is a global issue. It is an issue that affects, quite a number of countries across the world. Where does this put Trump in the fight against terror? Does it limit him? Does it? Can somebody punch holes in the kind of support that America can give to this crusade?
I think what it does is to isolate him as a person, because his views are not mainstream. You realize the Britons, of course, have been attacked several over the last few days, but they've not taken the same extreme measures Trump is talking about. The French, of course, welcome Muslims from all over the world, and they're still not planning to put in place the same extreme measures. So what he's doing is actually isolating him from the rest of the world.
Right.
And I think that is not the best way to win. You realize when Obama was elected, he promised to work on terror, but he didn't go ahead and begin talking about stopping Muslims from traveling to the U.S. and all that. And it was very good. Ever since he was elected president to the time he left office, we didn't witness any big attack on U.S. soil. So Trump comes in, and of course he begins applying these unorthodox and so unwelcome methods. So I don't think they're going to play so well, not just in the US, but of course on a global scale.
All right.
Yeah.
As we wind up, let's come back to East Africa, and something also has been happening with President John Pombe Magufuli. The first thing, he found himself in a lot of trouble about last week, when he made a comment about teenage girls who get pregnant should not be allowed back to school. Is that really going to have an effect on his presidency? Because you have all these women groups coming out to say this is wrong, and they've said that he has to put out an apology. And this is the first time that we're seeing Magufuli in that kind of a storm. He's been a darling to his people and even people in other countries. Yeah,
I think sometimes what we do when it's received so well, it gets into our heads. That is why I think we had to go ahead and apologize. Of course, it was a mistake. You cannot bar kids from going back to school just because they've gotten pregnant. It's not a basis for that kind of decision. So I like the fact that he came out and apologized. It was a mistake he made. And he has to be very careful because, popularity can evaporate within a very short duration. Just make one mistake and then you're gone. So it might be tough for him to continue being popular if he does what he did. If
he continues that. And the other thing, he put out an advice that, Kenyans should not get maize from Tanzania. I mean, what happened to EAC, creating a harmonious, group of countries that's called East Africa?
Now, Kenya and Tanzania, I think, have had problems for a long time. The problem is they've not come to the surface. Most of us do not get to know what's going on.
Sizzling under.
Yeah. And Tanzanians don't view Kenyans as friends. For a long time, that is how it's been. So it's all about him coming out to actually express what has been going on for a long time. And EAC is a toothless bulldog, of course. They don't do so well. They don't even work together. They don't even raise the money that is required to pay the employees who work for the EAC. So we cannot bank on the EAC to do anything for the community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Abel, as we wind up, what are you expecting this week to be another big story, especially internationally?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing, of course, Trump release, of course, another bombshell, something big.
Probably,
like he did with the Irish reporter, singling out and calling her that. So we can expect something big from him.
Something frosty from him.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Abel Oyeyo. He's an international relations expert, but also he is a researcher with the Center for African Progress. Thank you for your time. See you next Friday.